Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. I always like to be chronological. We're into the second week in July. It's kind of cloudy out there, and it's going to be in the 90s all next week. I'm just moving a little thing from my screen. Okay. Um, and last week it was in the hundreds. And July 4th, July 3rd, we lost power here. Terrible, terrible storm. So I had been looking forward for 6 months for the 4th of July, the 250th celebration, and that all got wiped out. And it was 83 degrees in my house, and there's no place you can go. There's nothing you can do. You're just stuck. Anyway, um, so I'm with Jennifer S. Benson, who is the creator of the Impossible Shift. And before I talk a little bit more about Jennifer, I'm going to do a commercial because I've been told do commercials. The commercial is, folks, if you like what you're seeing and hearing, please subscribe. And I've been watching a million other channels, and they all do the same thing. Tell people to subscribe. Hey, like it if you like it, but please do subscribe. It really helps. It helps the world. It helps YouTube. It helps me. It helps this podcast grow. Subscribers are very important. Commercial is now done. So, Jennifer and I met on a particular site, and it's a great site. Talks, right? It was
Yes.
talk,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and it brings people together, and it got us together, and we zoomed a couple of months ago, and it's funny. I take on what I feel is really important, and the work that Jennifer does in the Impossible Shift. It's a transformational platform exploring identity and healing and accountability and personal growth through storytelling and podcasting and honest conversation. The stuff she does, somebody who's been around the block. I've been around the block. I worked for the world's wealthiest Italian for 25 years, and I wrote this. I don't know if I told you I wrote that. 10 things I learned from the billionaire. So these are all things to improve yourself. And do they work? They sure do if you give it the time and the energy and the effort. They work. So the Impossible Shift and all the stuff that I've been reading about works. And Jennifer's a podcaster, an interesting podcast too, by the way. Animation there. I like that, and she does media. But her coaching and helping people develop is so needed because this stuff works, and that's why Jennifer is here. So I've now officially concluded my monologue, and why don't you say some opening words, Jennifer, and then we'll do some discovery.
Thank you so much, Calvin. So one of the things about myself is I do not consider myself an expert in any particular thing, but I do believe very strongly in our agency and our ability to make choices for ourselves to make improvements in our own lives. I think a lot of people get that confused often with external circumstances. And so I'll talk about that a little bit later as we get into the questions. But I'm really excited to be here today. Thank you, Calvin, so much for having me on the show.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And we're both, and by the way, you're in Maryland, and I'm in New Jersey, and the University of Maryland is a Big Ten school, and
Mhm.
Rutgers is a Big Ten school. So we have a bit of um, commonality there.
Right.
Yes, we do. Okay, so first question up: what is the Impossible Shift, and
So,
what inspired you to create it?
okay. So the impossible shift is basically the concept of choice is power. So when we think about making shifts or making changes, we say it's change is impossible. Well, change isn't impossible. Change is just difficult and it's uncomfortable. So when you start removing words like impossible, then you start to see what is actually possible. So I called it the impossible shifts because I know you're starting out at a place where you're saying, this can't be done, this can't happen, this is impossible. Okay, well, let's make that shift. Let's make this impossible shift and let's make it together. See how it starts, see where it grows, see how you can go from here to here with just some simple small steps throughout the way. We're not talking big leaps, you're not doing marathons, you're not, running till you're out of breath. You're just taking measured steps, measured choices, a little bit by a little bit every day, multiple times a day, right? What actually inspired it was I had written the first book was a journal I had been writing to kind of help me deal with some of the trauma from my past, and zero intention on ever putting that out to anybody because it's very private, very personal. You feel exposed when you do that. But anyway, so I sat down with my mom and I let her read my journal. And she shocked me because she told me that I should publish it. And I was like, what? But this doesn't, make you look good. Like, because there was some stuff in there about her. And she was like, that's my cross to bear. And, at the time when she first said that, I was resistant. I wasn't ready. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to I just wasn't ready. I wasn't at a place mentally yet. But she planted a seed. She planted a seed in my mind. So after she passed away, 6 years later, I actually published it on the anniversary of her passing.
Oh, wow.
And so now I'm going to release book two and book three sequentially and on the anniversary of her passing as a way to honor her for being that beacon of hope, and saying, this is something that people need to hear, regardless of how you may portray me in these pages. I'm okay with that, and that was, I think, very admirable. I don't know if that's the best word, but it made me see her differently in that moment.
Interesting. Yeah, you talk about your mom. My mom I have all my relatives' pictures who are gone, and friends too,
Mhm.
all over the wall there. Um, and I was, of course, particularly closest to my mom. It is what it is,
Right,
and
right.
her advice and so much of what I am, uh, who I am, what I am, is my mom. All this stuff, everything I do, is. Um, she actually came out of the picture a few years ago and typed "mom" on my cell phone. Long story, not to, some other time we'll talk about that. So moving on, but that's
That's touching though, that you
oh,
still remember her with such fondness, and
yeah, it is touching, and actually, I needed her. I
yes.
needed. I was writing Tortoise, you know, my Tortoise novel, which
Hmm.
got its 13th national award, and I got stuck near the end, really stuck. Couldn't write for months. For months, I'm stuck, and I wasn't experienced enough to get out of that writer's block. And then one day I found some music randomly that my mother loved. It was an opera, Mary Alonso from Philly. And I knew she loved that song, Only a Rose. And so for 3 days, being an OCD guy, I listened to it for 3 days. Uh, um, and it allowed me to be close to my mother because she loved that song and that singer. And then a couple of days later, I was just texting with a friend of mine, Gaetano, and he asked me a question, and I said yes. He asked me another question, I said yes, and I sent the text over, and I just took my phone and I laid it down, but it was open to his page, and 15, 20 minutes later, I go to pick it up, um, and then I look in the outgoing message is the word "mom" typed,
Wow.
and the goosebumps went up and down my arm. And without a doubt in my mind, I know she got permission to come out and do that little thing. And I asked a million people, how does something get typed? I don't have voice activation and stuff, and nobody ever gave me an answer. But I know the answer.
Right, right,
Powerful stuff. Anyway, moving on. So you talk a lot about identity in stuff I've read.
right. Hmm.
How do you think our early experiences shape the people that we ultimately become?
I think that there is a lot of influence there in how you are shaped in the earlier stages. So now, obviously, that's kind of where your agency comes in as an adult or as someone growing when you decide to make changes, that those are active changes. But when you're a child, you basically accept everything that is shown to you or everything that you see and witness as fact, as reality, as truth. And so if you are fed a lot of negative information, if you're fed a lot of biases, if you're fed a lot of hate, if you're fed a lot of abuse where you don't have a lot of value for yourself, you are going to internalize that as a child and believe that that is truth. That is your truth. That is the universal truth. That is the communal truth. That is societal truth. And you grow up with those beliefs in place. And it um, at that point, when you have the awareness that you have developed these truths and these are the foundations that you've built that have been laid down for you and you've built your life on, that's kind of where your identity, you're wrestling a little bit with your identity versus who I thought I'm supposed to be based on what I have learned and experienced and understood all my life to be true versus who I recognize myself as being today or who I want to see myself as being in the future. And so then you come across this big barrier of the identity that was formed for you and the identity you want to form for yourself.
Okay. In your work, you also discuss something called survival versions of ourselves. What does a survival version mean to you personally?
Well, so in my book, so it's called The Impossible Shift from Mean Girl to Meaningful Life. And I talk about very openly about how I had become a mean girl or a bully, you could say, to others in, when I was younger. And I did that as a survival mechanism because in my mind, I didn't feel safe at home, but at school, I could be powerful. And at school, I could control what was happening all around me. And if someone had to get knocked down, that was okay because you getting knocked down is just a unfortunate side effect of my need for validation, my need for control, and my need for safety in this situation. So if I know that, when I go home, there's a chance that I'm going to get beat up or cursed out or, not fed, then when I go to school, yeah, at school I have way more control, way more power. So yeah, I'm going to pick a fight with you just because I didn't like the way you looked at me because you looked at me with a look that I just didn't appreciate. And so I'm going to take you down and I'm going to make you feel all of my doubts, all of my insecurities, all of my things that I'm hiding from everybody, that I've already internalized to be fact and truth, and I'm going to take it out on you. You are not very comfortable. You don't matter to me, right? At that time, it's not about you. And I think a lot of what's unfortunate is I know I'm not in the minority like of people that have chosen to bully. Like we don't pick our victims because we're like they're a loser. We pick them because they mirror something in ourselves that make us feel uncomfortable. And so it's not about that person at all. It's always about us and how do we feel better about ourselves in that moment.
I like what you said. I just wrote that down. I told you I take notes,
Hmm.
which is good because I'm filling up a page already from you, But I like that we picked victims that mirrors something about ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really really interesting. I may be one of the few interviewers on the American continent who takes notes while he's interviewing people. Yeah, I never saw Jimmy Fallon do that or Johnny
Oh
Carson
man.
or Jimmy Kimmel. I just do because I think it's important, you know.
Right.
Anyway, um, was there a moment in your life when I mean this stuff is heavy, and shortly I'll lighten it up briefly. But in the meantime, was there a moment in your life where you realized you were no longer living as your authentic self?
Yes. So, there were several iterations of Jennifer over the years where I thought I was making these changes, but I was really just putting on different masks and I was still the same person, right? Underneath, I was still the same person. Underneath, I was still the mean girl, even though I was, in a church and leading a church group. I was still that same girl. I still didn't care about you at all. And so there was a point when I was in the service and just I hate to say it, but I met my now husband, but he was this guy at the time who was so different from all of the guys I used to date. Because I dated guys that I knew were players, I knew were cheaters, I knew were losers, because it made me feel better when I
Wow,
knocked them down. Like literally, I
wow.
made these guys feel like garbage because I saw them as garbage. They were nothing. So here was this guy interested in me that was the complete opposite of what I would go for because he was um, more innocent. And then there was a part of me that felt a pull towards compassion, a pull towards kindness that was foreign to me, to feel that kind of compassion and that pull towards kindness and that desire to protect and to love and to be kind for kindness sake and actually care about someone, not on surface level but on a deeper level. And I came wrestling face to face with these two versions of me. One was the one I knew very familiar, but intimately. And then this was another version of me I'd never seen before, but felt really, really good. And it took a little while to discover that that person that actually cared about people and actually liked to understand where someone's walk was and learn about them and who they were and like genuinely be interested, that was my authentic self. The other version of me was just survival. And once I realized that that was what the case was, it was a little easier to let go of the survival Jennifer and embrace this person who actually enjoys, you know, being in company with other people and caring about their well-being, not just for what I gain from it, but for who they are themselves.
As part of what you've been describing, um, it's just part of being a kid growing up, kind of
Mm,
thing.
yeah.
You know, we just don't know any better. And it's part of the growing up. And I wonder, and I like that comment you made about kindness. Um, so there aren't too many kind, I'm just throwing this out, off topic. You know, kids growing up, there's not a lot of kindness floating around. There's just too much peer pressure, too much emotion, too much everything for the kindness to drift in. So kindness, I guess, kind of grows into us as we get older. Um, and I'm just kind of fishing around here, but
I can see I can see what you're saying, but I've also had the distinct privilege of watching my children. Um, and I've seen them illustrate kindness on a level that I never was capable of doing before. And that tells me um, that it's not so much a child's lack of ability to share kindness. I think it leans more into the the how you were,
Raised,
how you were raised,
how you were raised.
those variables of that. Because when I won't get into her stories, but there was a story where she was a phenomenal support of a friend of hers in a very difficult time. And I was absolutely shocked at how mature she was. And she was only, she was 14 at the time. And what she was proposing to do and how she wanted to go about supporting her friend was, to me, something a 21-year-old would say, not a 14-year-old. So it really humbled me out to witness this with this young person.
Okay. Um, how do we um, begin separating who we are truly from the masks we learn to wear? Um, how do we do that? It's kind of complicated. Um,
It it's certainly not easy, right? Because if you've been spending your whole life believing this lie that you've accepted as truth about yourself, then you probably can't even hear that inner voice inside of you that says, "This is who I really am." Or maybe you can, and you just choose to ignore it because it's easier to ignore. But maybe instead of ignoring it, maybe make a choice to embrace one aspect of it, right? Maybe you have always wanted to go to the beach and you've never gone to the beach before, but there's a beach an hour drive from you or something. Maybe make a decision to go to the beach for the first time. See how that feels to your whole center and to yourself and what emotions it invokes when you do that. And I'm not suggesting just go to the beach, right? What I'm saying is take a step that moves you closer into the direction of the person that is your authentic self and the person that you are supposed like you are meant to be, that you want to be, but you're hiding behind this person you've created.
Not heavy stuff. I want to take a little break and go off topic. Just
Okay.
to, um,
Yeah.
yeah. So, because it's heavy stuff, which I love, because it's so real, and it really works. What you're describing in your journey. Um, it's fascinating. So, but anyway, Jennifer. So here goes question one: excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with, and it could be one, two, three. There's no rules here.
I, I would like to put it day with. Oh my gosh.
Uh,
You know, I would probably like to spend a day with Queen Elizabeth when she was in her younger age, like
like
her,
that.
not the wise, older version of her, but the younger version when she was still trying to figure herself out. I would love to sit down and like hear the way that she thinks about the world and her mindset because I'd be very curious
Like,
to to see how like where she was before to where she was, at the end of her journey.
she ascended, the throne. She was a young woman,
Yes.
and she stayed there, I don't know, 60 years, 70 years, whatever. But interesting. Um, choice. I like that. And I've been asking this question a lot. And this was the first time I heard that. It's an interesting answer. I like it. The other thing, I did a LinkedIn newsletter yesterday, and I've been thinking about this for a long time. Um, and I, I continually, I think I mentioned this before we went on air. I continually watch the same movies again and again and again. I've watched Casablanca 200 times, literally, if not more, and a bunch of movies. And I wanted to explore my inner self, it's kind of like an impossible shift kind of deal.
Mm.
What does that tell me about myself? That I keep watching these kind of movies. There's no horror. There's no science fiction. There's no big budget. There's no fantasy. It's just people stories. So I kind of asked for some help in doing, and I got back 25, 30 pages of an analysis of my watching my movie habits, and it was kind of fascinating to do that. And that was the gist of my newsletter. So, tell me some of your favorite movies.
So uh my favorite movie is Enchanted. Um, I don't know if you've heard of that one. It's not, it's not the biggest movie in the world, but what I loved about about that movie was the way that it took two worlds and brought them together. And it brought them together in a way where you could say to yourself, huh, I could see that being possible, even though like it's obviously, she's from a cartoon world, right? So it's obviously can't be really, really possible. But it made it feel you could suspend, disbelief and find yourself immersed in this idea of these two people finding each other from these two completely different worlds. And there's something absolutely phenomenal about that. And so like allow me to go off on a tangent for a second
Sure.
if it's okay, Calvin. So when, like I told you, when I met my husband, we were in the military. We were in California. I found out that he was from North Carolina, and I'm from originally from New York City. So we were worlds apart, culture, d- living situation, because I'm in the big cities and a small little tiny town. He has fields. I'd never seen a field, right? I'd never seen a cow. Yeah, city girl. And we both happened to get our calling to join the service in these two different locations, end up in California at a gazebo, um, across the country to meet and fall in love for the first time. Two different worlds, you know. Never, if we would have, if I would have gone down there or he would have come up to New York, we never would have met. But it just so happened that everything aligned in such a way to put us both in that place in the same place at the same time. Uh, and I find that to be phenomenal. I think that's why it Enchanted is my favorite, because it takes those two ideas, those two people from these two very different worlds, and brings them together. And it's beautiful because it seems impossible, but yet it is.
Like that. Nice. Nicely said. All right, back to work a little bit.
Okay.
Why do you think so many people, why do you think so many people struggle to use their voice to speak the truth, um, and their truth? Why do people just have a hard time speaking their truth?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons why someone has a hard time speaking their truth. Sometimes you've given away your voice to someone else. Sometimes you may have been uh, uh, brought up to believe that you shouldn't have a voice. That old saying, children are meant to be seen and not heard. That lives with you long past when you are no longer a child. And so you believe in that idea that you're not supposed to speak, you're not supposed to be seen, you're supposed to be quiet. And so some some people never get past that. They never get to the point where they're like, well, I'm not a child anymore, I should be able to speak. And it just becomes a part of, well, I'm not supposed to speak, I should just let someone else speak, let someone else do the talking, let someone else decide.
Okay, okay. Um, there's another thing in my reading my notes. One of your themes is accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how do we take accountability for our past without, and you alluded to this, without getting stuck entrapped in shame.
So those are good notes. Okay. So it is, I guess I'm going to make it as simple as possible. It's called forgiveness,
Wow.
right? Can you forgive yourself for the mistakes you made when you didn't have the knowledge to make other choices?
Okay. Powerful. That's a great word. Um, Forgiveness. We should. I have a problem with that word. Big problem. It's funny you brought that up. A huge problem.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Maybe you can analyze me. I'm very principled. Uh,
Hmm.
I'm very principled. I have huge principles, and somebody who's really, in my immediate world, who people are really, really close, and they've let me down um, tremendously
Hmm.
with my values, with everything. No fights, no nothing, but I just have a problem forgiving. So I excise, I remove those persons from my life because I can't forgive.
So forgiveness is never about the other person. Forgiveness is always for yourself. Because, well, now what you've said, creating boundaries, that's totally different. You can absolutely say, I'm removing you, expelling you from my life because you violated my boundaries. Period. Full stop. That's it. You don't have to give any justification. But forgiveness is not for their benefit, it's for yours. Because regardless of whether or not they the forgive, like when you hold on to that anger and you hold on to that pain and you hold on to the bitterness, it replays constantly and it only hurts you. They are going on about their lives regardless of whether you've forgiven them or not, right? But we don't, when we don't forgive for the benefit of the other person. Or you shouldn't, because it's not for them. It's always for you. It's for your peace of mind. It's for your tranquility. It's for your healing. It's for your way of saying, I'm letting go of the trauma that you have caused me because I don't want to hold on to it anymore. But you can still absolutely have those boundaries, absolutely cut those people out because, yeah, you don't need them in your life. But that doesn't mean that you hold on to that stuff. You allow yourself to forgive for your own sake. So, not even saying, I forgive them, but just say, I am going to allow myself to forgive myself for letting this happen, if you want to look at it that way. Or if you say, they betrayed me, but I'm going to let it go for my own peace of mind. They're out of my life. That it doesn't matter anymore. That's in the past. How I move forward and how I make choices moving forward is what matters, because we can't erase the things and the damage that they've caused. All we can do is protect ourselves from that kind of pain in the future. And it starts with loving ourselves enough to say, um, I'm going to let this go for my own sake, not for their sake.
Yeah, I need I need a lot of work in that department. I've rifled through a lot of enough, not a lot, but
Yeah,
enough people who I've removed
right.
from my
Well, and
life.
you think about it, right? Calvin, when you're in that moment and you're reflecting on the situation that took place, it brings back anger, it brings back frustration, it brings back regret, it brings back a bunch of questions like, how come I didn't see it coming? How come I didn't know they were going to betray me? And all of these self-doubt and negative things that don't serve you any purpose. But if you forgive, so like, my parents, they did stuff that wasn't good, but I forgave them not for their benefit, but for mine because I wanted to heal. So now I can talk about their story and I can tell their life from a different lens because I'm no longer burdened by though or haunted by those memories, right? They're just memories of things that happened. They're no longer tied to emotions. And that's the difference between someone who has forgiven for their own benefit and someone who has not.
Interesting. Interesting. I'm glad I asked that because that's always on top of my personal list of things I'd like to fix about myself and how to go about it. You know, I was a salesman and I could sell, but I can't deal with some of the things. So thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, you also said that sometimes grief doesn't look like grief. Um, there's something you call invisible forms of loss.
Yes. So when we think about grief, obviously we think about someone passing away because there's a clear association between someone passing away and grief. But grief can look like someone getting sick. Grief can look like someone no longer able to carry children or having a miscarriage. Grief can be you no longer capable of doing the type of work that you used to love doing. Grief can look like you no longer have the body that is capable of doing the physical activities that you used to take such pride in and formed your identity around. Um, all of those can be grief because you are now having to deal and process emotions that are very strong about this loss or perceived loss. In some cases.
Okay, this question is really important to me because I kind of deal with it often in my life. Why do you think, Jennifer, why do you think people resist change um, even when they're unhappy, they still resist change?
The simple answer is because it is easier.
Okay.
um, I mean, if you think about it, it's really hard to change because you have to get a little bit uncomfortable to do it. You have to make different choices from the choices you would normally make to lead you in a different direction from the direction that you're moving in. All of that requires awareness, all of that requires persistence, commitment, and those are scary when there's no guarantee of success. So you're taking a leap of faith that the things that you do will actually create the change you're looking for. And so
Okay.
it's easier to just say, you know, "No."
Um, what does healing look like in real life? Not kind of like a polished version that we see online or something. Uh, that's kind of heavy too.
It's a little heavy. uh I I want to I believe that healing is something that it it looks like letting go of the things that caused you pain slowly. Um, it looks like a morning when you get up for the first time and you can sit and look out your window and not cry. It looks like if you've been stuck in your house because you haven't been able to leave, and you open the door and you let the sun shine in for the first time in months. Um, it looks like sitting at a bench, in front of a park and just watching people walk by. So healing is to put it simply, because I know I just made it a little long, is a series of moments where you find yourself at peace. And eventually, right, those moments will get longer and longer and longer until you have healed. But it takes a long time. So you have to accept that maybe as you're sitting at that couch looking out that window, you may start crying at some point and be okay with that because when you first sat down, you didn't. Right?
Okay. As we kind of wind down a bit, I always like this question. What do you hope listeners feel when they hear your podcast or when they read your work? What are you trying to get them to feel?
I'm trying to get them to feel empowerment. I want people to see that they can, control they may not be able to control the external things that happen to them because that is life, but they can control how they respond to them. And that control of how you respond is where all of your power and your agency comes from. Um, because if someone can get in your face and yell at you in your face like this, and you can still walk away, maybe you've done a little growing.
Listening to you, you're the WW. I don't use that WW very much, but WW is wondrously wise. You are wondrously wise and practical. Um, uh,
Catherine, that's incredibly kind of you to say that.
yeah, all this is just so it's there, but none of us ever delve or sink our teeth into this. But listening to your responses and the things you said, you really are wondrously wise, and what a gift that is. And the fact that you make that gift available with the impossible shift is even better. Um, uh, when somebody finishes something with the impossible shift, um, a book, episode, whatever,
Mhm.
what would you hope that stays with them the most?
I hope that they can, walk away from it saying, huh, I'm gonna try that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Getting somebody to, it's like when a rocket, here's my analogy, when a rocket is going to take off, just to lift that rocket 1 foot in the air, the initial 1 foot in the air requires the most amount of energy to lift it up.
Exactly.
One
Yes.
of my favorite, I actually made that analogy up with so many different things in life. That first foot, my goodness. And then as it starts getting higher and higher, you got all kinds of energies and stuff, and it goes faster and faster. But just lifting it up that first foot, tough, and that's what you just said.
Yes.
Yep. Uh, uh, and last question. I scribbled this down. Looking at society today, what impossible shifts do you think humanity needs the most? Hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I scribbled that down.
um, you know that so there's a number of sayings that one person can make a difference. That saying one person can make a difference. I believe there's some truth in that, in as so far as saying that that person can inspire another person who can inspire another person who can inspire another person, inspire another person. the some of the challenges that we have, not just in this society, but in the world in general, is that we have, as a world, decided that we were going to live just for ourselves. The community is gone. We have communities, but the community whole is gone. And um, I think we get that back when each person embraces who they are supposed to be in their authentic selves. Because as humans, I like to believe that we are naturally inclined to want to love each other, support each other, take care of our planet, take care of our stuff. And when we start doing it for ourselves, then there's a trickle effect, because then we start doing it for others, and then so on and so forth and so forth, until eventually the majority are living in this larger whole of this understanding that, yes, we are working for ourselves, but we're also working for each other as well. But you can't give from an empty cup. So if you're constantly filling your cup, but it's never getting full, you're gonna stay focused on me, 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 me. What can I do? How can I change? But as your cup starts filling and flowing, then you're able to share some of your cup with someone else.
Nice.
That's I know that's a very simplified way, and I know that it doesn't work that way in reality, but it would be surely nice if we could get there.
Sure. It would be cool and nice.
And I don't know. I'm a believer. I think one day our children's children, or our children will get to experience that world. It'd be fantastic.
We'll get there. I think we'll get there. We have so much positivity, so much good stuff going for us as a species.
Hmm.
We'll get there. We haven't done a lot in the last couple thousand years. And I've always said, we've been in the Garden of Eden from day one. We just don't realize it. We made up this. No, we're in the Garden of Eden, and whatever. Anyway,
Yeah, no,
um,
I hear what you're saying. Yeah,
yeah,
and then and if that's true, then we've got to make it, we got to make it all beautiful again. Right?
correct.
I go. And,
So we have the ability to do it. So
yes,
let's do it. So, uh, this has been great.
I had a lot of fun.
Truly, like I said, as when we first connected a few months ago, and I started delving into the impossible shift, and again, I come from that world, having worked for a billionaire and imparting things that can make us better, and it's funny, I had 6 years at Rutgers, science and chemistry and pharmacology and all that stuff, and all the lessons I learned, there wasn't one practical thing I could extract from 6 years of that kind of schooling, and I always thrive on something that I could use in everyday life. And so my 6 years of college was devoid
Oof.
of, I mean, it
Yeah,
really was. I mean,
yeah, right. Yeah.
still physics and chemistry. I spent more time trying to find ways to beat the system, not to study. And I won't get into that now. Some of those I'm not proud about. You do what you got to do. So when I come across someone like yourself who has practical ways that really makes a difference in a life, I like that, and I lived it. Some of the things I wrote in my billionaire book, I mean, these are things I was taught by the world's wealthiest Italian. And one thing I always remember, one thing he taught me about, in dealing with a certain type of buyer, and because I was so cynical that this stuff can't work, but whatever he taught me that day, I took it out the next day and encountered a particular type of buyer, and I used it as exact words. I got the biggest order I ever got, and I ran into my car, and I got hysterical laughing. Hysterical laughing. Why?
Nice.
Because these words of advice from this billionaire guy really worked. and I laid the line, on this buyer. It was a tough buyer, and he just gobbled it up, and I walked out with my biggest order. So in my world, this stuff, which is semi-clinical, really worked.
Right.
And that's what my takeaway from you has been with my 3 pages of notes, Jennifer, that I wrote
Nice.
down stuff. So this was great, and of course I'm inviting you to come back anytime. We're now friends, and to talk about stuff, because this stuff is so needed. And what you're doing is so needed. Impossible Shift. What's the website?
Theimpossibleshift.com.
Fine, easy,
Easy, right?
easy, easy, easy.
Yeah.
So, do come back.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been great. Sometimes you don't know what to expect, but it was delightful and real
Absolutely. Thank you so
and
much.
real. Thank you. So I'm going to stop recording. Don't leave. We'll do a 2-minute wrap. Perfect. Thank you,
Okay.
Jennifer.
Thank you.